Good journey, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Space Oats, a Crucial Crew podcast. I am the Crucial Crew member, Jay, and this week we're going to talk a little bit about some of the production of some of our past Star Wars films. I kind of thought about this today, and it changed a little bit as far as what I was going to discuss. We might, depending on how long this goes, this conversation a little bit with connecting to the anniversary of the production of Force Awakens starting. We're going to expand off of that a little bit, but then we might talk a little bit about Visions again, at least the first two episodes. And then a few other things. Who knows? And then, if we have some friends joining us this evening, we will we'll answer any questions that they might have and discuss any topics that come up through the chat. So how about that for some Star Wars this week? But yeah, nothing really new in Star Wars, right? So we're just kind of carrying off of what we got from May the 4th. No new content released. So we'll just have to make do with what we have. But carrying off, basically, oh my gosh, it's Kurt. Man, I haven't heard from Kurt in a while. That's awesome. Thank you for joining, Kurt. Oh my goodness, that's awesome. It's good to see somebody that I haven't really heard from in the past for a while. So yeah, really cool. So let's kind of get into this. So The Force Awakens today in Star Wars history. The date today is May 16th. So May 16th, 2014 was when principal photography began on The Force Awakens. So May 14th, 2014. That's when the very first scenes were filmed for a new trilogy. First scenes filmed under Disney, having control of Lucasfilm. So of a new trilogy that we were all excited about, because this had been new Star Wars content that had always been rumored that, George Lucas had a story for after Return of the Jedi, and we never knew what that was. This wasn't really anything carried off of what his story was. These are new stories that were written, but with a little bit of what his intent was, because he did have an intent of bringing back the original trilogy characters. So he kind of talked about that before the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney. Now, these first scenes were filmed in Abu Dhabi, which is in the United Arab Emirates. So basically, the filming sequence for the scenes of Jakku is basically what we're looking at there. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but the Rub al Khali Desert was the stage where the shots for Jakku were filmed. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that, because sometimes it always looks good on my end, and I'll usually have a test camera up and I can see it, but for some reason it always looks good with me. And then I have some people tell me that it gets jumpy every now and then. So I appreciate that. I'm not actually hardlined, so I don't have a way to hardline from this room that I'm in. Maybe one day I'll get a hardline in here, and that could be a guarantee all the time. So, but yeah, I'm glad it's coming through okay. So that's great to hear. But yeah, so that was Princess, and that got me thinking. I was going to talk a little bit about The Force Awakens a little bit. I'm actually watching The Force Awakens. I have that on, but and actually Jakku scenes are up right now, which yeah, I mean, Jakku was cool. I mean, going back to the desert, we thought, when we first saw the trailer and we saw scenes in the desert, we're like, are we going back to Tatooine? Is that going to be the thing? But we found out that this was a new planet Jakku, which makes sense because if they would have go to Tatooine, they would have gone back to either Death Valley or Tunisia, which would have made sense. But yeah, so they went to Abu Dhabi, and we got a new planet. This got me thinking to like all the other first like filming times of the Star Wars films, and just to kind of get a rundown of like everything, kind of going back into history, because Lucasfilm was really good before Disney. Lucasfilm was really good at documenting like the first day of shootings, especially for the installment of the Star Wars sagas, so forth. So going back to the original trilogy, let's go back to when filming started for A New Hope. So March 22nd, 1976. That was the first day of principal photography in Tunisia. So that was Tuzir, Tunisia, for Star Wars. That was where basically 130 crew went into the desert. 42 trucks and cars, 8 army trucks full of equipment, and that first shot was completed at 9:35 a.m. in the morning on March 22nd, 1976. Obviously, this was Tatooine, and we know pretty much everything that was filmed Tatooine for A New Hope. Basically, the scenes of Lars Homestead and so forth, and a lot of these locations still exist. Galaxy Tours it does a lot of tours through Tunisia, Star Wars related tours, where you can actually kind of get that immersive experience and go to these filming locations with that travel group. I've met those guys a few times at Star Wars Celebration. They're really great. It would be really cool. It's like on my bucket list to do something like that, is to actually do one of their tours, go to locations. Tunisia would probably be probably the highest bucket list location to go to at some point, to be able to see these locations, because that's these are the first shots were filmed for Star Wars, so that would be really awesome to be able to get there at some point and see these actual locations, and hopefully they'll be around whenever I get the chance to be able to do that. That would be amazing. Moving on to Empire Strikes Back. Actually, a month before I was born, March 5th, 1979, was when the first day of principal photography began for The Empire Strikes Back. So it's fun to like go back and look at this, because you look where my time frame of my life came into Star Wars, and it was a month after this, a month after Empire. So basically, while Empire Strikes Back was getting into filming, I was born. So March 5th, 1975, the first day of principal photography. This was in Norway this time. Obviously, the scenes for Hoth were the shots that were filmed first in Finse, Norway, for The Empire Strikes Back. The crew members the crew endured those crazy temperatures in Norway. Lots of amazing stories were told about that location and the sub-zero temperatures that were endured at that time. Crew members getting frostbite, very heavy winds. They couldn't even like go outside, avalanches. And basically they were able to pull off those first shots within 65 minutes of their setup. So really quickly. And we heard like, if you've watched a lot of the behind the scenes, you know that some of those shots basically were them just opening the doors to the cabin that they were staying in, and just basically doing them out of the doorway because it was just so cold there in Norway. And I don't know if they do it every year, but I know that there's groups that go to Norway every now and then, and Star Wars groups, and they stay at that cabin still, I believe. And I think that's one of the things that Galaxy, I don't know if the Galaxy Tours does that, but I think that's an excursion you can do and stay at that cabin. And you can actually go there and stay. uh, in that area where those shooting locations. Obviously, it's in the snow. I mean, in Hoth, you can't really know where anything was really filmed, especially in an area like that where snow drifts constantly change and so forth. And so it's not going to look the same, but you can actually go to that filming location and visit that as well. Return of the Jedi, January 11th, 1982. So a little bit earlier started there for Return of the Jedi, a couple months before. Um, so they got a little bit of a head start. And honestly, I didn't realize this. That's a day after my anniversary. So I should always remember this now. Return of the Jedi was the first movie I saw in theaters. So it's pretty cool that that connection. I didn't even realize it. A day off. If I'd have gotten married on a Sunday, I would have had the same anniversary date as the first day of principal photography for The Return of the Jedi. But I got married on a Saturday, so January 10th is my wedding anniversary. But I didn't realize it was that close. That's pretty cool to go back and, like, again, to see these things. I'd rather camp out in the volume with a snow-filled background and Grogu, right? Yeah, I did my time in the snow too. So, I mean, if I ever went to that location, I think I'd go. Maybe in the summertime of Norway, maybe so I didn't have those sub-zero temperatures. I don't know what the temperature is all year round there, but I've always actually wanted to go to Norway. I almost went one time a couple years back. And honestly, if I'd have gone, I probably would have tried to venture to this location. That would have been pretty cool, and it was during warmer season, so I'm sure it wouldn't have been as crazy going there when I went. But yeah, Return of the Jedi, January 11th, 1982 was when principal photography began. This time it wasn't at a location. Return of the Jedi's first day of shooting was at EMI Elstree Studios outside of London. And although inside that studio, the set had to simulate a sandstorm scene, but that scene was actually ultimately cut from the film. That was the scene that basically after everything happened on Tatooine with Jabba the Hutt and everything like that, it was a scene that was filmed, and I believe you can see the deleted scene on Disney Plus under the Return of the Jedi extras. That I believe that scene is there. I know it was in the DVD Blu-ray special editions. But I think it's on Disney Plus as well. Can't remember if I've checked that out or not. But yeah, that scene was ultimately cut. It was the Millennium Falcon, them basically all kind of saying their goodbyes and splitting ways. Lando Calrissian, Han, Luke, Leia, C-3PO, R2-D2, Chewbacca, all them kind of going their separate ways in that scene. So yeah, first time, not actually on a actual location set. This was at the studio. And then we took some time off between 1982 and then the special editions that came out. But June 26, 1997 was the first day of principal photography at Levesden Studios in Hertfordshire, England, for The Phantom Menace. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those English city names correctly. I just got back from London. I should know better. So George Lucas returning, shooting a sequence in a blue screen lined set, which basically kind of began a tradition of the digital CGI that George Lucas was getting into at this time, kind of foregoing a lot of practical effects and focusing more on moving forward with technology and creating new ways to film, which gets a lot of backlash. But George was always someone who looked forward and did things, had a vision for things, and was very creative. And if it wasn't for him doing that, we wouldn't be where we are today. So, and you always got to start somewhere. And yeah, it's not going to look the greatest in the beginning, but you have to start somewhere. And he was the one that pushed the boundaries in that. And we wouldn't be where we are today with the film industry unless he did that. So you got to respect that. He was always on the groundbreaking as far as technology, especially in the film industry. Kurt says Misa totally CGI. Yeah, speaking of Jar Jar Binks, who we all I grew to love him. I don't know if you did, Kurt, but he's I take it it's a little easier to watch The Phantom Menace was than it was the first time I saw it. Well, not even really the first time, because the first time I thought it was great. I saw Phantom Menace like 21 times in the theater, and then I think the high kind of went down a little bit, and then for a while it was kind of like not the greatest movie. But then now I go back and it's not my least favorite prequel film. So, but yeah, so George Lucas shooting a sequence of blue screen line set with actors Ian McDiarmid and Ray Park. So I'm guessing that this scene was the scene, because the only scene I can think of with live Ian McDiarmid and Ray Park was the scene on Coruscant where they're out on the balcony. And basically they're getting ready to reveal themselves. Darth Maul's getting ready to go to Tatooine to hunt down the Jedi, and or to hunt down the Queen, basically Queen Amidala and the Jedi. So I think that's the scene that they filmed on Coruscant. I think that's the film, the scene that's talking about. Kurt says, "Say what you will, at least George had a plan and a storyline for episodes 1 through 3, unlike certain other trilogies." Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll address that note. I like to address that every once in a while because I have my thoughts on that as well. Flash forward to 2000. So also going back to Phantom Menace. So the Phantom Menace started filming in June. So we're looking at summer months here, which is interesting. Getting pushed back a little bit, not the traditional earlier in the year. And then same thing with Attack of the Clones, June 26th, the year 2000. So the first day of principal photography for Attack of the Clones. This time we're at Fox Studios in Australia. A big leap from anything that's ever been done before with Lucasfilm, going almost all the way across the other side of the pond there and going to Australia. The first scenes shot there featured Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, and R2-D2 was present. So there could have been a number of scenes, honestly, for Attack of the Clones with Hayden, Ewan, and R2-D2. I don't know which scenes in particularly were shot that day, but it could have been a number of scenes with them. So I'm guessing it was something early on in the beginning, but I'm not really sure. But that's the I couldn't really find the actual which ones. Kurt says, "Yeah, I'll admit I saw episode 1 probably 5 to 6 times. We geeks were just so starved for more Star Wars." Yes, we were. Yeah, like I said, like 21 times. I think I even remember the Phantom Menace, going to the theaters to see the trailer. I bought tickets to go see the trailer, and that's it. Don't even remember what movies they were for. Basically just walked in the theater, watched the trailer on the big screen, and then walked right out. Basically buying a theater ticket just to see the trailer. And I did that a number of times. Founder remembers episode 2 versus episode 1 as far as the plot. So, and honestly, so here's the thing. Episode 2 is my least favorite of the prequel trilogies. There's a lot that I love about it, don't get me wrong, but I think episode 2 is the most where you see that George Lucas is not a very good script writer with dialogue. it seems to me like there's just a lot of scenes that are very mechanical in the way that the scenes play out because of the dialogue that goes on. So, and I see that the most in Attack of the Clones. OMG, yeah, I did that shit. Oh, talking about, yep, going to the trailer and then walking out. Don't even remember what movies they were for. I really, really don't. Have no clue what movies they played those trailers for. But I found out which ones, and I went and saw the trailers on the first days that they would release them with whatever movie they were being released on for the weekend. Let's see here. So we are up to Revenge of the Sith. So June 30th, 2003 was the first time, the first day of principal photography for Revenge of the Sith. Again, this was at Fox Studios, Australia. George's Achilles heel is casting and script writing dialogue. I honestly don't think that casting is an issue with him. I just think that it's really the it's what these actors had to say, and how they were directed to say it was what the issue is. I don't have any issue with any of the casting choices, honestly. Um, I hear people criticize Jake Lloyd in episode 1, but child actors are child actors. Like, you're only going to get so much. And I really like, the more and more I watch, I don't really have too much of a problem with Jake Lloyd's character. Honestly, like, I mean, I'm just picturing George directing him, and I think if you had another director in there, or another screenwriter, I think he would have did a lot better. And also Hayden Christensen. I mean, I don't think he was really that bad. It's just, I really do think that it was just some of those scenes with the dialogue back and forth just did not work. And I don't think it was believable for those actors that were put in those. Yippee. He was 8 years old. He was 8 years old. June 30th, 2003, Revenge of the Sith started filming. The first scenes shot featured... oh, I already went through that. Sorry. Oh, I was reading my notes the wrong way. Attack of the Clones' first scene was actually Ian McDiarmid again filming scenes on the first day. So that could have been a lot of different things on Coruscant. So Coruscant. So yeah, and it was actually 3 years to the day of episode 1 starting filming. Was it really? Interesting. I didn't even realize that. Yep, June 26, 1997 for Phantom Menace, and June 26, 2000 for Attack of the Clones. I didn't even realize that when I'm like looking at my notes again. I kind of went through this, and then I just... yeah, so that was pretty awesome. June 30th, 2003. So that's where the scenes with Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Ewan McGregor and R2-D2. So that could have been, again, that could have been a lot of different scenes. I don't know what they were shooting first. Honestly, it's hard to tell with, like, when you're in a studio and you're just doing blue screen, which scenes they were actually filming. So, and then we have what was mentioned earlier with 2014, today in 2014, the scenes for The Force Awakens being filmed in Abu Dhabi. It also gets a little bit vague after this, because I was trying to find out other information on The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi principal photography began at Pinewood Studios in England in February of 2016. I don't know what actual scenes were shot there at that time. It was really, really hard to try to find out, but I couldn't make that happen. Ryan Johnson, of course, director of The Last Jedi. And then principal photography began in August of 2018 at Pinewood Studios in England. So a big delay there in start for a number of reasons. But again, back in Pinewood Studios in England. J.J. Abrams actually posted a tweet on Twitter to celebrate that first day of filming with a very blurred image of episode 9. And the image, you could kind of see Finn in his newish outfit, as well as Chewbacca on the Falcon, and maybe even Rey piloting the Falcon there. So we're thinking possibly this could have been a scene from the very end of the film, that would have been, let's see, Finn and Rey. No, that would have been kind of in the beginning when they were maybe going to, when they were, basically all over the place, all together as the team. Finn, Poe, Rey, all of them, Chewbacca, everybody in the Falcon together. Probably some of those scenes, which were filmed at that time. So a lot of different variations of when those films were started and where. But again, starting in the studio with the last two. Force Awakens really the only one kind of breaking that barrier after the prequel trilogy and going back to shooting on location somewhere for the first shot. J.J. Abrams taking over the helm of Rise of Skywalker, that was one of the reasons they did a lot of rewrites on the script and so forth. All sorts of things that caused some delays in production starting with that. That's why it started so late in August. But more and more as I watch the sequel trilogy, I'm going to kind of go along with what Kurt was talking about and basically the storylines for the trilogies as a whole. I agree with the cohesiveness, the connectivity of the sequel trilogy not being there. And obviously it shows that when you have different writers, different directors, that's going to be a thing. So I was worried about that from the beginning. I did read the original episode 9 script. And I don't know. I really don't know. Do I think it's... I just don't know. Like, honestly, I have no problem with the way the Rise of Skywalker's script is. My deal is, because as the more and more I watch it, I like it as a standalone film. As I do like all the other sequel, like The Force Awakens, I love it as a standalone film. The Last Jedi, I really love it as a standalone film. If you take away Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker and you watch The Last Jedi and you come up with your own twist on a movie in the beginning, before it and afterwards. The Last Jedi, I would have loved to have seen a sequel trilogy revolving around Rian Johnson's uh, whole storyline. Because I love the look and the feel and everything about The Last Jedi. I thought it was very different with Star Wars. And some people felt it was too different, but I loved it. So that is my favorite of the three. Force Awakens is definitely my second favorite, but I'm not going to say that Rise of Skywalker is horrible, but I haven't watched it as much as the rest of them, and the more and more I watch it, I grow to like a lot about it. So exactly, I agree with you, Kurt, saying that people that hated the Rise of Skywalker, but really, what was JJ supposed to do? You know, he had to tie up two very different movies. His movie and a movie that took it in a completely different direction, probably way different than what he had in mind for his characters that he put in The Force Awakens. Um, oh, are you talking about me saying that Last Jedi is my favorite of the sequel trilogy? Um, yeah, oh, I'll go toe to toe with anybody that wants to argue that point. I know a lot of people that feel the same way with me. But yeah, I will back that up with so much and make people think about their hatred for that movie. um, I love The Last Jedi. I love it a lot. So so yeah, the those were kind of just kind of wanted to kind of go through all that stuff. I thought that was kind of interesting, the way that it was laid out with all the first shots of all the films. I thought that was pretty interesting. Just kind of thought about going and looking all those up once I kind of, I don't know how I kind of got on that tangent, but yeah, made me want to kind of go back and see the first shots of all the films and kind of how that worked. So solidly The Last Jedi saying, yeah, we'll do an in-depth conversation of Last Jedi one day. I'll do that sometime in the future. That'll definitely be a topic. Maybe I'll have a guest on at some point and argue that point with somebody, or have someone that I know that's in favor with me, and we can talk all about the great things about the Last Jedi and how amazing it was, and how uh, there was some really cool stuff in there. Anti Last Jedi, huh? Think they can compel Boyega to come back for the? I don't know, and I don't know if we really need him, unless you want to go and carry on the story of him possibly having any Force ability. Um, we'll see. We'll see. I have a feeling that if they did, if that was the intention, we're talking 15 years after, maybe something happens to him, and I don't know, maybe they kill him off in the storyline somehow. I don't know. But I don't think he needs to come back. I wouldn't mind it. I would love to see him come back, but I don't know if he will. So, but you never know. Never know. Maybe they're keeping that as a surprise, as another surprise for later. You know, the big reveal was Daisy Ridley, because she's going to be the main character, the main part of the story. Um, but yeah, maybe she, maybe he'll be announced at some point. Well liked character, just yeah. I mean, I agree. I liked Finn. I thought he kind of didn't get the story that he deserved. Mostly in The Rise of Skywalker. Talked about the May the 4th voyage. Are you allowed to talk about it? I wasn't on it. My recommendation is, if you want to know anything about it, there's a lot of other podcasters that have posted a lot about it. I actually just watched Stephen and Sarah's podcast from last week, The Princess and the Scoundrel, and they talked a little bit about it. They don't spoil anything on the cruise, but they talked a little bit about their feelings about it. It was their third voyage, this time without their kids. It was a good listen. So there's a lot of other people that have posted about it. Did you go to Drew? Yes, I did. I went to the Muster meetup at Planet Hollywood. Yes, it was great. Yeah, Sage was there, and Megan was there, who is friends with Captain Keevan. Those were the two of our main cast. I think that was the only two that showed up. Oh no, Robbie too. Robbie, who used to be friends with Wraith Cole in the beginning. Those three showed up. And then a lot of our other passenger services and myself were all there. Saw the live broadcast too. Yeah, I just watched that today. It was a good one. Yeah, the Muster meetup was great. I talked about that last week on my podcast, so a little bit. So you can go back and listen to that a little bit. Yeah, it was a good time. Yeah, I wish a lot of people could have made it that weren't able to make that one. So I wish you could have made that one too. That would have been really cool. I actually wish I could have been on the cruise, honestly, but going to London kind of curtailed that. So, but maybe next May the 4th. I know Steven and Sarah are talking about that. So who knows? Maybe I can get on that next one. I do have a good amount of time left because I usually do this for about an hour. So I was actually intentionally going to talk about go back and, because I briefly went over some of the first two episodes of Star Wars Visions. I don't know if anybody has gotten into all that yet. I know some people still haven't dived into season 2 yet, but I've been watching some of them multiple times, and the first two episodes are probably some of my favorite out of the whole season. That first episode, I think, was done really well. That being the episode that is entitled Sith. And I've been thinking about this. I've been talking with some people as far as interesting things that you see when you watch different perspectives of characters and who their characters are. So in that episode, we have a character who is technically Sith. The way the story plays out, we learn that she basically left the Sith ways, left whoever it was, maybe her masters or the group of Sith that it was. You kind of almost can't even tell with that episode as if it is master and apprentice or master and former apprentice, and who those other characters are, if they're just kind of like Knights of Ren-ish kind of characters, or are they Sith as well. So don't really know if the rule of two is followed in that episode, but the Sith character in that story, which her name is Lola. That's right, Lola. It really, if you look at, you can. So she's technically Sith, She's not like giving up like all of her ways. Like she's using the dark, but she's almost become a gray Jedi when you really look at that episode. Kurt never watched a single Visions episode. Guess I should get still stuck mid Clone Wars season 4. I would finish watching Clone Wars. But see, the cool thing about Visions is you can just like do a one-off every now and then. So if you're going through Clone Wars and you're like, oh, I just need a break from Clone Wars, I would just throw in a Visions episode every now and then. And honestly, I wouldn't even start. You don't even have to do like season 1 and then season 2. Now, if I were you, I would actually kind of bounce back and forth because season 1's hard to really get through that whole season. It's all Japanese studio that did season 1. Season 2 has studios from all around the world. So it's easier to get through season 2 because you're getting a lot of different styles, which is really amazing. And like I said, that first, and I'm not going to spoil it since you're watching and I don't want to give anything away, but there's a couple different characters in that first episode. So you have Lola, which you kind of get this like almost like gray Jedi vibe. We're told she's a Sith, but you really don't get that feeling full that you can tell she's given up the Sith way, but maybe there's still a little hint of darkness in her. And there's ways that that's portrayed in the art, because there's a lot of art aspect in that episode. But she's not full on Sith because obviously she's got a droid friend, which got me thinking as far as the droids. When you think about it, her friendship with that droid really shows that she's not full on Sith anymore. Somebody asked me today, like, what my character would be if I was in Star Wars. Like, where would I fall? Would I fall dark side or light side? And they basically said how I portray my character on the ship, which technically we're neutral as crew members on the Halcyon, but we always kind of sway a little way in the end. And I usually sway resistance side, but sometimes I kind of sway First Order for the fun of it. Just depends on the day. But honestly, when it all comes down to it, I love droids. And the Empire, the dark side, they don't really have any love for the droids. So I think I'd always probably sway towards the light in that way. You think about all these Jedi that have like connections with their droid counterparts. The Sith don't have that. They don't rely on droids as friends or as part of their crew. Patrick made it. Cool. Awesome. Talking about Visions, but I'm not giving anything away, so I don't know if you've watched anything or not. But yeah, just like with that obviously that title of that first episode, Sith, is very deceiving because honestly, I don't even think that it's really pertaining to her presently in that episode. It's basically just a title of the way of the Sith, and that she's given it up, but maybe not fully. So it's an interesting episode, and it really makes you rethink maybe why they titled that episode Sith. It is a ongoing struggle in that episode. You can still tell that she's fighting those feelings of the darkness, especially with that art aspect of it, that symbolism in what goes on with the art. Patrick says this season seemed like it was a lot about how the dark and the light are intertwined. Yes. And it really, really, like, again, I was saying that it kind of, it almost makes you think. And I, like, every time I keep thinking about this, and I watched it again a little while ago, I almost just thought about the gray Jedi, like the in the middle, like lightness, dark, kind of needing both. Which is what I kind of think the New Jedi Order series might be about, with Rey kind of embracing both, like kind of realizing that she does need, like, we need the dark side, we need the light side, we need both of them, and finding that middle ground. First episode was about how there could be some light within the Sith. Right. I agree with that. That's why I love that first episode. So, obviously she's not full on Sith anymore because of what happens in that episode. And I love how, her love for the droid comes out. That droid E2 is amazing as well in that episode. I love that droid. It almost reminded me of a little mini separatist droid, which was really cool. Had a lot of similarities to some of those separatist droids that you saw on Geonosis during the battle there in Attack of the Clones, which was really awesome to see kind of those parallels. And then also parallels to Revenge of the Sith with that really cool bike scene, the circular bike that Grievous had in Revenge of the Sith, reminded me of that vehicle that she pulled out and was roaming around that planet on. So that was really cool parallels to that. And then, again, the art, the light, the dark was all involved in that, which kind of was stemming from her, that there was still darkness in her, but then there was light in her. So that's why I don't think really that the title was really pertaining to her at present. But she still considered herself, I think, Sith. But she said she didn't. So I don't know. It is kind of interesting. Kind of interesting as far as like what that title meant. And I love that episode. That was a great episode. Her lightsaber was her lightsaber was amazing. I was even saying, like, if that lightsaber ever got like built as like a legacy saber, that would be an amazing saber. Which also again paralleled, yes, the light and the dark in that saber itself. So it was really amazing. And then there was that second episode, which was again, the first episode ended. You didn't really know the story could go on. You don't really know where her path is going. She's kind of she's the master of her own destiny at the end of that episode, which is really cool. The second episode, from beginning to end, really made you think as well. And again, was dealing with the Sith a lot in that episode, almost like in a horror way. Which was really awesome. Talk about how like horror really hasn't made its way into Star Wars, but that episode definitely did. There was a lot of horror in that episode. That episode being Screecher's Reach, which was kind of like a ghost story when you think about it. You had all those little characters. Let's see here. We had the main character, which was Dal. And then you had her friends. I have two of the names. I think I don't think I got the other name. I don't think I wrote it down, either that or accidentally. But two of her friends, Quinn and Kina. But I love that scene in the beginning. Russ Banshee. That Banshee was super scary. And I have my thoughts about that. It was kind of interesting, but I love how they kind of were like telling like the ghost stories and stuff, almost like the legends of this and that. What they hear. Nobody's ever seen it. Stories of this, stories of that. I thought that just gave it a great setup because we didn't really know what was going to happen, and it was a good segue into the actual finding out what was going to happen in that episode. And that scream was really awesome. Just horrifying. Stand By Me vibes. Yep. I get you. I didn't even think about that, but I get you. Yep. Them sitting around telling those stories. Don't really know if any of it's true or what, if there's pieces of it that's true. I love that. That's a good analogy of that. I never even thought about that, but Stand By Me, great film, by the way. But that scream was just crazy. Hearing that for the first time and then watching the reactions from them. I also thought it was interesting that Doll made it the point where she said, "It's all in my mind. It's all in my mind." So it kind of gave the vibes of all of those scenes in the films where we have these visions, or the Jedi have visions, especially Luke on Dagobah, going into the cave, the vision of Darth Vader. Was it really real? Was it in his mind? He really almost couldn't tell because it was so realistic. He actually pulled out his lightsaber and he was convinced he was striking something. So it kind of gave me those vibes like, it was the character even real? Like, was that Banshee character even real? Was it a vision? Was it something that the character at the end of the episode was projecting in there? Was it a projection, a forced projection of some sort? Yes, it did actually make contact, but if you're going along with like The Last Jedi, it's just so wild to think about. Like, really, like, was the character even there? Did anything ever actually happen? And the one thing that I kind of want to look at is at the end of that episode is, so while she was in the cave, the lightsaber does strike her, but at the end of the episode, does it show that mark? That's the one thing I meant to look at, and I didn't get to watch that one again today, but I wanted to go back and watch that and see if the mark was still there after she came out of the cave. Because if it wasn't there, then it definitely was a vision. If it was there, maybe the character was actually in the cave. Why they got me, but until she lit the saber, I thought it was a legend or story. Yeah. I honestly, I was feeling the same way until that saber was lit. But again, I still don't know if it's an actual being or not. That's what I'm kind of like curious about. Now, obviously, this character Doll has force sensitivity from what we see. She's discovered that in the cave. And again, darkness within this individual, which obviously she's being watched. Somebody's sensing this. Somebody's looking for an apprentice in this way. And then we have that at the end. And another really crazy ending of this episode, not knowing what's going to happen next. I loved how a lot of these episodes and visions, you could kind of see extra episodes being written down the line by these creators, and maybe further future episodes almost being short story series from some of these. I guess that would happen if we get a lot of really good response from season 2 and some of these episodes. Maybe that was the intention of doing it, to possibly expand these stories into little short stories series. Maybe even if it's in comic book form or something like that. That would be the way. This is the way. One final thing before I close out tonight is there was another anniversary or kind of moment in history today, which I almost forgot about until later this afternoon. I haven't talked about it at all today, but I did throw a post up there real quick. Yes, definitely the bar was raised on season 2. But in 2002, today in 2002, the movie Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones opened in theaters in the US. So it's the anniversary of Episode 2 being released. We were talking about that earlier as we were going through the different times that principal photography started for each film. I didn't mention this then, but Kurt, who was on, mentioned that was his favorite film of the prequel trilogy. It is my least favorite film of the prequel trilogy. But yeah, it opened in 3,000 theaters in the US. 55 of the bookings were in a new digital cinema format because this film was shot entirely on digital cameras, and this was something new for George Lucas. Again, groundbreaking technology within the film industry, shooting on all. It was meant to be on digital projections. He wanted that to happen in certain cities. I remember in Annapolis, Maryland, was the closest one for me. I remember going to that theater to see it, to make sure that I was able to see it in that proper format. So yeah, there is listings of all those cities if you can't remember like where they were, but that was the only one in Maryland, was Annapolis, which was booked specifically for that purpose. But yeah, Battle of Geonosis was really awesome. Honestly, at the time, I could tell. I was like, oh, it's a lot of CGI. I didn't really like it at first, but now it's like one of my favorite scenes. Was a lot of what happened on the Battle of Geonosis, all the way up until the point of Yoda's lightsaber. I still kind of can't grasp my head around all of his jumping around, but there's parts of that lightsaber that battle with Dooku that I liked more than others. But yeah, I've liked Attack of the Clones more and more as I watched it. There's certain scenes that kind of could always do away with, but other than that, it's a great movie. It's Star Wars, right? But yeah, 2002, Attack of the Clones, released today in 2002. Boba's origin, yeah. That was another thing that I kind of just, didn't really like too much. Again, child actors, Daniel Logan's great. He did the best he could do, but some of his lines, I really just think that different lines and different director could have made it so much better. But we love George Lucas. Nobody wanted to direct. He didn't want to direct it. Nobody else wanted to do it, so he kind of had to do it. But Yeah, so it's 11 o'clock. So I've been doing this for about an hour. Patrick, I know you joined a little late, but thank you for joining regardless. You can go back and see what else we talked about in the beginning. So had a lot of fun going through the uh, principal photography for all the films and just kind of going back through that. Kurt, thank you for joining. Thank you for anybody else that's joined in. Um, if you're watching this a little bit later, again, thank you. Subscribe. I do this every Tuesday night. Around this time, and unless some unforeseeable thing happens and I have to move it, but yeah, every Tuesday night for now, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Space Oats podcast. The Crucial Crew podcast. I am the Crucial Crew member. Thank you so much. Follow me on Instagram at the Crucial Crew member if you're not already. And this also is streaming, obviously just recorded, but usually posted up on Spotify and Google Podcasts, and you can listen to them and go back to listen to them anytime. So, all right. With that being said, here's the Star Wars. Tabuite, may the stars light your way.